I never imagined my own daughter would humiliate me in front of 200 wedding guests, but that's exactly what happened on her wedding day. I was standing near the stage, holding the small velvet box that contained her late mother's diamond necklace. It was supposed to be my gift, a family heirloom passed down for generations. I thought she'd smile, maybe even cry. Instead, she looked at me with disgust and hissed through gritted teeth, "Dad, please. Don't ruin my big day. You're embarrassing me." The microphone caught it. Everyone heard, the hall fell silent, whispers spreading like fire. My knees felt weak. My only daughter, Emma, the child I'd raised alone after my wife died, was now glaring at me like I was some unwanted guest. Her fiancé, Ryan, quickly stepped in, pretending to calm her down. "She's just stressed, Mr. Carter," he said smoothly. "Let's not make a scene." But the smirk tugging at his lips told another story. I walked off that stage without saying a word. My hands trembled as I tucked the necklace back into my coat pocket. It wasn't just about the insult. It was about what I had overheard the night before. Through the thin walls of the guest house, I heard Emma and Ryan talking. Ryan had said, "Once the wedding's done, your dad's house will be ours. He won't need much where he's going." And Emma laughed. "Yeah, I just need him to transfer the fund first. Then he can do whatever he wants." They didn't know I was awake. They didn't know I'd heard everything. That morning, I sat quietly at the breakfast table, watching them toast champagne, pretending to be the perfect couple. My heart was breaking, but my mind was clear. So when she said, "Don't ruin my big day," I realized she'd already ruined something much more important, our family. That night, while the guests danced and the music played, I made a call to my lawyer. I canceled the $90,000 wedding fund and rewrote my will. After Emma's words, "Don't ruin my big day," the hall went silent. The band stopped mid-song. Even the clinking of glasses froze. I stood there, holding that velvet box, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. For a moment, I thought maybe I had misheard. Maybe she hadn't just humiliated me in front of everyone. But then she turned to her friends and said loudly, "He always does this. He can't let me have one moment to myself." There it was. Confirmation. My daughter wasn't my little girl anymore. She was a stranger wearing her face. Ryan's mother, a woman who had never liked me much, came over and whispered in Emma's ear. They both laughed quietly. I could see Ryan smirking, shaking hands with his new in-laws like nothing had happened. I walked out of that hall slowly, every step heavier than the last. Outside, the night air was cold. The fairy lights glittered above the lawn, and the laughter inside echoed faintly. I could hear the MC announcing the next dance, as if my humiliation had never occurred. I went to the edge of the garden and sat down. The necklace box was still in my pocket. My late wife, Laura, had worn it on our wedding day. She had always said, "When Emma gets married, give this to her. It'll protect her heart." I almost laughed at the irony. Protect her heart. How do you protect something that's already turned to stone? As I sat there, lost in thought, one of the catering boys came by and handed me a glass of water. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked softly. I nodded, but my voice failed me. And then, through the open windows, I heard Ryan's voice, boasting to one of his friends, "After tonight, I'll have everything settled. Her dad's signing the property transfer soon, and we'll have our own place." My hand tightened around the glass until it nearly cracked. I thought to myself, "You think I'm your fool? Let's see who signs what." That night, I smiled for the first time in hours. It wasn't joy. It was clarity. Months earlier, when Emma had first gotten engaged, I was the happiest man alive. I remember the day she told me, her eyes sparkling, voice trembling with excitement. "Dad," he proposed, "we're getting married." Ryan seemed perfect then, confident, well, dressed, polite. He shook my hand firmly and called me sir. He told me he wanted to build a family that would make me proud. I believed every word. When they started planning the wedding, I offered to cover most of the expenses. I had saved $90,000 over the years, partly from my pension, partly from the insurance pay out after Laura passed. I'd always called it Emma's future fund. It wasn't just money. It was love stored away for the day she'd start her own life. At first, she was grateful. She hugged me, cried even. But as the months went on, things changed. She began talking more like Ryan. Everything became about image, about impressing people. She wanted a luxury venue, designer dress, imported flowers. When I hesitated, she said, "Dad, stop being cheap. This is my day." Those words cut deep. Ryan's parents offered to help manage the budget. They started handling vendors, payments, even my own contributions. Whenever I asked about invoices, Emma would roll her eyes. "You don't need to stress, Dad. We've got it." Still, I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that despite her sharp tone, her heart was still kind. Then one day, Ryan came to visit me alone. "Mr. Carter," he said smoothly, "Emma and I are under pressure with last-minute costs. If you could just transfer the fund early, we'll handle everything." "Early," I repeated, but we agreed to release it the week before the wedding. He smiled. "Right, but think of it as a gesture of trust." That phrase, gesture of trust, stayed with me. I didn't say yes. Instead, I called my lawyer, Mr. Hayes, the next day and told him to freeze the account temporarily, just in case. The rehearsal dinner should have been a happy night. Family, laughter, music. But the air was thick with tension. Ryan's parents sat like royalty at the head table, whispering to each other and barely acknowledging me. Emma floated around in her designer dress, greeting guests, barely meeting my eyes. When I tried to say a few words during the toast, Ryan interrupted. "Let's keep it short, Mr. Carter. We have a schedule to follow." I stared at him for a long second. The disrespect was no longer hidden. It was proudly displayed. As the evening wound down, I went to my guest house room on the estate. It was small, quiet, tucked behind the main hall. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the last few months, every small insult, every dismissive word. And then, through the thin wooden wall, I heard voices. "Emma's Ryan's. After the honeymoon, I'll get him to sign the transfer papers," she said. Ryan laughed. "Good. Then we'll sell that old place and move somewhere better." I froze. Every word was a dagger. They weren't just ungrateful. They were planning to take everything Laura and I built. For an hour, I sat on that bed, staring at the ceiling. My chest ached, my hands shook. I thought about my wife, about Emma as a child running through the garden, clutching her mother's hand. Where had I gone wrong? As the clock struck midnight, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I'd watch. I'd let the wedding unfold, and when the time came, I'd make sure they saw exactly who they were dealing with. Before Ryan came into our lives, it was just me and Emma, a team of two against the world. When Laura passed away, Emma was only 12. I remember her holding my hand at the funeral, asking, "Who's going to help me with homework now?" I promised her I will, always, and I did. I worked long hours at the hardware store, came home exhausted, but still made time to cook dinner and listen to her talk about school. We didn't have much, but we had laughter. On weekends, we'd plant flowers in the backyard, tulips, Laura's favorite. Emma was bright, kind, and had a way of making any room feel lighter. She'd say, "Mom would be proud of us, Dad," and I believed her. Every milestone, her graduation, her first job, I saved a little extra. Every paycheck, I'd put something aside into that future fund. It wasn't just money. It was a father's dream that when her time came, she wouldn't struggle the way we did. On her 18th birthday, I gave her a letter Laura had written before she died. In it, her mother said, "Never forget your heart, Emma. It's what makes you special." That night, Emma hugged me and cried. I can still feel that moment, the warmth, the gratitude, the love. But over the years, something shifted. The world got louder: social media, fancy lifestyles, people showing off things that didn't really matter. Emma started chasing that world. She stopped coming home as much. Started saying things like, "Dad, you wouldn't understand. Times are different now." Maybe I didn't understand. But I never stopped believing she'd come back to who she was. The first time Emma brought Ryan home, it was a Sunday afternoon. He pulled up in a brand new black BMW, wearing a designer suit, even though it was 90 degrees outside. He stepped out, smiled confidently, and extended his hand. "Mr. Carter, it's an honor," he said. "Emma's told me so much about you." He was polite, charming, well-spoken, the kind of man any parent would be happy to meet. I wanted to like him, I really did. During dinner, he talked about his business ventures, his network. His plans to buy a luxury apartment. Emma looked at him like he hung the moon. I noticed how often he used the word success, how often he glanced around our modest home, his smile fading when his eyes landed on our old furniture or family photos. When he left, I turned to Emma. He seems ambitious, I said carefully. She grinned. Dad, he's amazing. He wants to build something great for us. Maybe I was overprotective, but something about him didn't sit right. Too polished, too perfect. A few days later, my friend Daniel, who worked at a local bank, pulled me aside. You know that guy your daughter's dating? He asked. Yes, be careful. I've seen his name pop up in a few shaky investments. I asked Emma about it. She got defensive immediately. Dad, you're just being paranoid. Not everyone lives paycheck to paycheck like you. That one stung more than I could admit. I walked away, saying nothing. But that night, I sat at my desk, staring at the family photo from when she was 5, her sitting on my shoulders, both of us covered in paint after decorating her room. I whispered to the picture, "What happened to you, my little girl?" It started small missed dinners, canceled visits, shorter phone calls. When she did come by, Ryan was always with her. He'd compliment my quaint little house, but his tone dripped with condescension. Emma began dressing differently, talking differently. She started using phrases like, "It's all about perception, Dad, and you have to keep up." I remember one night when she came home wearing a diamond bracelet. "Pretty, isn't it?" she said. "Beautiful." I replied, "Ryan must have spent a fortune." She laughed. "Oh, he didn't. He said his client gifted it. That's how business works now." I wanted to say something, but the last thing I wanted was to drive her further away. Then came the moment that truly broke me. She asked me to meet Ryan's parents. I agreed, hoping it would bring us closer. Their home was like a museum: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with portraits. Ryan's father spoke to me like a child. His mother offered me tea, then commented, "Emma tells us you still work part-time. That's admirable at your age." Emma didn't defend me. She just smiled awkwardly. That drive home was the longest of my life. She sat beside me, scrolling her phone, while I stared at the road, feeling invisible. When we got home, I said quietly, "Emma, do you even see how they treat me?" She sighed, annoyed. "Dad, they're just different. You always overreact. Not everything is an insult." I wanted to yell, to remind her of everything I'd sacrificed, the nights I skipped meals to pay for her school, the years I spent alone. But instead, I said, "I hope you remember who's been by your side since day one." She rolled her eyes. "Please, don't start with guilt trips. Ryan says we should focus on the future, not the past." That night, I sat in my room, heart heavy, staring at my wife's photo. "Laura," I whispered, "our daughter's slipping away, and I don't know how to reach her." It was a Sunday afternoon, about 3 weeks before the wedding. Emma and Ryan came over, all smiles, carrying a folder. They sat across from me at the dining table, where the smell of coffee lingered and the sunlight spilled through the curtains. "Dad," Emma began, "we need your help with something small." Ryan opened the folder and slid a few papers across the table. "These are just some formalities," he said smoothly. "It's a joint ownership form for legal safety. If anything happens to the property, Emma will be protected." I stared at the papers. They looked official, full of fine print and legal language. "Why would Emma need protection?" I asked slowly. "The house is already in my name, and one day it'll be hers." Ryan chuckled. "Exactly. We just want to make it easier. You know how complicated inheritance can be these days." Emma smiled tightly. "Please, Dad, just sign. It'll make things so much simpler." Something about her tone. It wasn't a request. It was a command dressed as concern. I looked down at the papers again. There was a line at the bottom, waiting for my signature. My hand hovered above it for a second before I gently pushed them back. "I'll read them properly tonight," I said. Ryan's smile faltered, but only slightly. "Of course, Mr. Carter. Just don't delay too long. We need it for the loan pre-approval." "Loan," I repeated. He cleared his throat. "Oh, it's nothing major, just wedding expenses. We'll handle it." After they left, I sat in silence for a long time. I didn't touch my coffee, I didn't move, the house felt colder than usual, and for the first time, I realized how quiet it was without laughter, without love. Then I picked up the phone and called Mr. Hayes, my lawyer. "Can you come by tomorrow?" I asked. "There's something I need you to look at." He arrived the next morning. After a few minutes of reading, his expression changed from curiosity to concern. "Carter," he said quietly, "these aren't joint ownership papers. These are transfer of ownership documents. If you sign these, you'd be giving your entire house to them." My chest tightened. I asked him to make a copy and lock the originals away. Mr. Hayes was a man of few words, but that day he spoke with fire in his eyes. "They've disguised these papers smartly," he said. "It's a full transfer, effective immediately upon your signature, and once registered, reversing it would be near impossible." I sat there, silent, absorbing every word. Hayes continued, "I've seen this trick before greedy sons. In-law, manipulative relatives, but Emma," he shook his head, "I didn't expect her to be part of it. Neither did I." That night, I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. My mind played every memory like a cruel film. Emma running to me after school. Emma baking cookies with her mother. Emma crying when her first pet died. How did we get here? The next day, I pretended everything was normal. When Emma called, I acted cheerful. "Of course, honey. I'll look over the papers soon." She sighed in relief. "Thank you, Dad. You're the best." But inside, something inside me hardened. I decided I wouldn't warn her or confront Ryan yet. I'd wait. I wanted to see how far they'd go. Over the next week, Ryan sent subtle reminders. "Any updates on the paperwork, sir?" His politeness felt like poison. Hayes suggested, "We'll prepare something special, a counter document, just in case." He drafted a new will, one that excluded Emma entirely if any attempt of fraud or coercion was proven. It would remain sealed, only to be activated if necessary. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Hayes asked. I nodded. "I'm not losing everything Laura and I built to greed. Not again." He placed the papers in his briefcase. "Then let them play their game, Carter. We'll be ready." That night, I looked out at the tulip garden, the one Laura had planted before she passed. The flowers swayed in the wind, soft and fragile, yet somehow stronger than I felt. I whispered, "Laura, if you can hear me, give me the strength to face what's coming." The week before the wedding was a blur of activity. Decorators, caterers, photographers all swarming around like bees. Emma was glowing, not from joy, but from pride. Everything was perfect in her eyes, the venue, the dress, the spectacle. "Dad, you'll love the reception layout," she said one morning. "We're making the head table elegant like something out of a royal wedding." I smiled weakly. "Sounds beautiful, sweetheart." But in my heart, I knew I wasn't part of that picture anymore. I was just a supporting character in her show. Ryan strutted around like he owned the place. "We've got investors and clients coming," he said proudly. "It's going to be great exposure for my company." I wanted to laugh. A wedding as marketing, but I bit my tongue. Every time I looked at him, I remembered Hayes's words. Transfer of ownership. The day before the wedding, Hayes stopped by quietly. He handed me a sealed envelope. "This contains your revised will," he said. "I've also arranged for the $90,000 wedding fund to be temporarily suspended under my authorization. You'll have full control." I hesitated. "It feels cruel." He shook his head. "No, Carter, it's justice. You're not punishing her, you're protecting yourself." That night, I stood alone in the decorated hall. Rows of chairs, golden drapes, soft music, rehearsals, it all looked like a dream. But dreams can hide nightmares. As I touched the velvet box in my pocket, I thought about Laura again. She'd wanted our daughter to wear that necklace as a symbol of love. Now it had become a test of truth. I whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll know who Emma really is." The next morning felt like walking into someone else's dream. The venue sparkled white roses, gold ribbons, and chandeliers that made the whole hall shimmer. Everyone was smiling, laughing, celebrating. Everyone except me. I sat quietly in the corner, clutching the velvet box. The necklace inside wasn't just jewelry. It was my wife's last blessing. I'd waited years for this moment to place it around my daughter's neck and tell her, "Your mother would be proud." But fate had other plans. when the MC announced, "Let's welcome the bride's father for his blessing." I stood, trying to steady my breath. Emma turned, smiling brightly for the cameras until I stepped closer. The smile disappeared. I opened the box. "This was your mother's," I said softly. "She wanted you to have it today." Emma's eyes flickered, then hardened. She leaned in and whispered through her teeth, "Dad, please don't ruin my big day. You're embarrassing me." The microphone picked up her voice. Her words echoed through the speakers. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ryan quickly took her arm. "Honey, calm down," he said for show, but there was triumph in his eyes. People began whispering. Some looked at me with pity, others with curiosity. I felt heat rise in my chest, shame flooding my veins. I wanted to scream to tell them all what I'd heard the night before, but instead, I closed the box, nodded, and walked away. I left the stage, left the hall, and stepped outside into the cold air. The music resumed inside, but I couldn't hear it. All I could hear were her words replaying in my head. "Don't ruin my big day." My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Hayes." I said when he answered, "Do it." He didn't ask what I meant. He already knew. The wedding carried on like nothing had happened. Guests drank, danced, toasted the new couple. Emma posed for pictures, her laughter too loud, too forced. Ryan made a show of thanking everyone for their support. But underneath it all, something was shifting. While the guests were eating dinner, Mr. Hayes met me in the parking lot. He handed me a folder one I had signed weeks ago. "Everything's done," he said. "The $90,000 fund has been canceled and rerouted, and the new will is officially registered." I nodded slowly, staring at the glowing windows of the hall. "Good. What about the house?" he asked. "It stays with me," I said. "Until I'm gone. After that, it goes to my sister's kids, not Emma." Hayes hesitated. "You're sure about that?" I looked up at the stars. If she'd asked for love, I'd have given her everything, but she asked for ownership. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing." When I went back inside, the party was at its peak. Ryan was giving a speech, full of arrogance and charm. "I want to thank my father-in-law," he said into the mic, "for his generosity and support. We couldn't have done any of this without him." The crowd clapped. I just smiled a small, knowing smile. Later that night, when everyone left, Emma found me sitting quietly by the exit. "You didn't even dance," she said, her tone half accusing, half dismissive. "I had work to finish," I replied. "Work on my wedding night?" She scoffed. "Sometimes I think you care more about money than me." I looked her in the eye. "Funny, I was just thinking the same about you." She didn't understand, then not yet. But she would soon. It took only 3 weeks for the phone call to come. Emma's voice trembled. "Dad, the wedding fund, it's gone. The account's empty." I kept my tone calm. "It's not gone. It's just redirected." "What do you mean?" I mean. I said quietly, "It's no longer under your name or Ryan's. I canceled it the night of your wedding." She gasped. You what? Why would you do that?" "Because I heard everything, Emma, the night before your wedding. You and Ryan talking about selling my house, about getting me to sign papers. I wanted to see how far you'd go, and you went all the way." There was silence, then the sound of muffled sobs. "Dad, I didn't mean, don't lie to me." I cut her off. "You knew exactly what you were doing." A week later, she and Ryan showed up at my door. Ryan was furious, his charm replaced by rage. "You can't do this. That money was promised to us." "No," I said calmly. "It was offered under trust. Trust you both broke." Mr. Hayes arrived a few minutes later with documents. "Everything is legal." He told them firmly, "The will has been updated, and the fund no longer exists in their names. There's nothing to contest." Ryan turned on Emma. "You said he'd sign." "You said, 'Stop it,'" she screamed. "I didn't know he'd do this." They argued right there in my living room, their love dissolving into accusations. When Ryan stormed out, slamming the door, Emma collapsed onto the couch, crying. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. I thought you'd understand." I looked at her for a long time. "Understand what? That you sold your heart for comfort." She looked up, her mascara streaking her face. "He promised me everything, and I gave you everything," I said softly. "You just didn't value it." She left without another word. That was the last time I saw her for months. After the confrontation, the house fell quiet again. For the first time in years, it was truly silent, no laughter, no phone calls, no good morning, Dad. just the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. I tried to keep busy. I worked in the garden, fixed the shed, even cleaned out the attic. But everywhere I looked, I saw memories of her. Emma's drawings still hung in the hallway. The piano she used to practice on gathered dust. Even the porch swing, the one she'd begged me to buy when she was 12, creaked in the evening wind, like a ghost of better times. For weeks there was nothing but silence between us. No texts, no calls, just absence. Then one morning I ran into Mrs. Lewis at the grocery store, Emma's former piano teacher. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said gently. "I saw Emma the other day. She didn't look well, said she moved back to her apartment alone." I felt my heart twist. Alone. Mrs. Lewis nodded. "Yes, I heard she and Ryan split up. Something about money troubles. He left town." I just stood there, frozen. So, Ryan had shown his true colors after all. The man who once called me Dad at dinner now vanished at the first sign of financial strain. That night, I sat on the porch, staring at the stars, thinking about all the mistakes, hers and mine. Maybe I had been too hard on her. Maybe she was blinded by love and promises, just like her mother once was. But love doesn't excuse betrayal. It only makes it hurt more. It was an envelope, simple, white, with my name written in her handwriting. For a moment I hesitated, afraid to open it. Then I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just words written in shaky ink. "Dad, I'm sorry. I let greed blind me. I thought Ryan loved me, but he loved what you built. When he left, I realized I destroyed the one person who never would have. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to start over on my own this time. I don't need the money anymore. I just wish I hadn't lost your love in the process. Emma." I read it 3 times, my vision blurred. I had imagined many ways this would end: anger, lawsuits, silence, but not this. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the small wooden box where I kept my wife's belongings. "Looks like our girl finally learned," I whispered to my late wife's picture. The following weeks brought small changes. Emma began calling again, short, cautious conversations at first, then longer ones. She told me she'd found a modest job, that she was saving up, and that she wanted to make things right. And one evening she asked, "Can I come home for dinner?" I said yes. When she arrived, she looked thinner, older, but her eyes were softer. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "I missed you, Dad." I didn't say much. I just held her, because some wounds don't heal through words, only through time and humility. After dinner, I brought out the old folder Mr. Hayes had left. Emma froze when she saw it. "Dad, is that—" "Yes," I said, "my will, but not the one you think." I handed her the last page. She read it silently, her lips parted in shock. "If my daughter chooses love over greed, she will inherit not my money, but my trust." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "You knew I'd fail." "No," I said softly. "I hoped you wouldn't, but I wanted to give you the chance to prove me wrong." She began to cry quietly, clutching the paper to her chest. "I don't care about the inheritance anymore," she said through tears. "I just want my father back." I smiled faintly. "Then you've already earned more than money could ever give you." We sat together on the porch, the same porch where she once used to swing and tell me about her dreams. For the first time in a long while, it felt peaceful, the kind of peace that comes only after surviving a storm. As the night deepened, I looked at her and said, "Emma, respect matters more than money, and now you know it too." She nodded slowly. "I do, Dad, I really do." That was the night we began to heal, not as father and daughter fighting over inheritance, but as 2 people who finally learned what love without conditions truly means. Money can buy a wedding, but never respect. Love can build a home, but greed will burn it down. In the end, all that truly matters is who stands beside you when the money's gone.